Okay, here we go, and we'll try this again. Just give it one more whirl. I'm not sure where it'll all end up, but um, obviously doing a series of videos to try and attest to some stuff, and really felt like that this was going to happen at some point. Starting to at least feel a little bit more healthy. Obviously, it's been a few days since the election, and yet still trying to work through the issues in regards to all of that. It's amazing afterwards. You know, I mentioned I went to Whitefish Point and went out there, and you're just so depleted, so exhausted, so completely without any energy left, and you've given it all, and you're completely exhausted emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, and so you really just, and yet you can't sleep, and there's some difficulty with that, at least in my case, and so it takes a couple days to kind of work those pieces out, and I was obviously trying to work through those pieces, and there's a lot of, obviously you're walking through these steps, and there's a lot of regret and sort of the way that things happened, and yet you know, the record that I have when it comes to my efforts in the state house in regards to my voting and my sponsorships and the things I push for, and pushing hard against the progressive leadership, you know, I have no regrets in those regards. Obviously, the other areas, some of the other areas where things happen, I do have some regrets. But I think the reason to do these videos is to give sort of that sense and understanding, and maybe to bring a little bit of balance and sort of clarify the record. People can take them for what they're worth, not watch them. I always have to laugh at people who make comments and they say, you know, just go away and stop talking, please. And I think, well, why are you watching the video if you don't want to hear about it? Just don't click on it and don't watch it. But I think that in reality, you know, they want to know what's going on, or they want to hear sort of that, and then they want to just demean it and, you know, sort of vilify it. But inside of this, I'm just going to try and make a couple of points, and we'll see where it goes, and try to keep these short. I tried to keep them under 10 minutes and see if we can make that happen. It's hard for me. Got a lot of words, and in trying to string these together so that they're done well. But you know, I have some notes. I'm going to try and use them, and hopefully this will be useful. This is my office. Last time I did it in my truck, and this time I'm doing it in my office just because I'm sitting here this morning, and we're going to try and put this in motion and do it today. But these guys, you know, ultimately, I think the step is that, you know, you can start anywhere. You can start with the sort of this extortion plot. You can start with the campaign that happened here. You can start with sort of the allegations. You can start with this, you know, the ridiculous email, which was ridiculous because it was a ridiculous email. I mean, you can start at any of those spots, but I really think you need to go all the way back to right after the primary when it was won, and you started to get a lot of pressure from people that saying, hey, you need to, you know, get along and go along, or you're going to get ground out. And in the midst of that came Keith Allard and his desire, obviously, to be the chief of staff and to operate the offices, and then of course Ben and Josh, who were two guys that I know for a long time, who were desperate to go to Lansing and be a part of that. And you had this sort of perfect storm of these three guys who had political aspirations, and none of them had really administrative ability to be able to run an office, or nor desire to sort of serve in that capacity. And obviously that showed up. But Keith came to us, really, he approached us about being the chief of staff, and right after winning, and what I didn't know is that he worked for the Granholm administration, had one of those jobs, had a lot of opportunity going forward, and yet for whatever reason that was cut short. Don't know. Obviously those things are not let loose in any capacity. But then he went to work for Justin Amash and worked there for a number of years. Again, we don't know why exactly he left. There are people who have obviously left different positions. I'm not exactly sure. It is unusual. He worked for a liberal Democrat, and then he worked for a libertarian. And but in essence, he became the chief of staff. And there were obviously issues right off the bat. Those are documented along the way. Keith started meeting with the chief of staff for the speaker's office secretly, and the other staff as well. And sort of in these secret meetings, also texts and also phone calls. It's all documented. And the speaker's team, obviously, they were, you know, my political enemies. And so you had staff right off the bat from the very first weeks involved in a series of meetings with them. So these guys have brought forward a whistleblower action. They didn't bring it against the state of Michigan, saying the state is their, you know, hired and fired them and wrongfully terminated them. No, they brought it against myself and Representative Gamrat, excuse me, and said that we had the ability to hire and fire them, and that we were their employer. You know, and which is clearly sort of it's a sort of preposterous idea. But it doesn't seem to matter. You can file a lawsuit to say that. You know, the state of Michigan, you know, if you look at it, in reality, all the paperwork says that the speaker is the one that actually is their employer, and the representatives have no ability to hire or fire. I'm just going to cover a few things. Obviously these guys made a series of allegations. Those allegations were scandalously reported around the world, and went like fire around the world, and of course were the basis for this House report that said deceitful, dishonest, and untrustworthy. And these guys made these allegations. In reality, the three of them came forward and said these are all the things that were wrong, and just really, really, layered in this report. And then all three of them refused to testify. Refused to come under oath, refused to be cross-examined, refused to show up to the hearing to actually come forward and to testify under oath in regards to the allegations. And no witnesses were really offered to attest to any of the underlying allegations. And that obviously went all around the world over and over and over again, and saying that there's misuse and stolen funds and briberies and forgeries and all these sorts of allegations that were never ultimately proven. But that doesn't matter when you're looking at the idea of good media. Most journalists, they're not interested in finding the truth. They're interested in selling paper, and some of them do a good job, but most of them are bloggers, and there are very few investigative journalists who want to give sort of the balance of talking about, okay, these guys are making the allegations, but then they refuse to testify, and there isn't really anyone else outside of these guys who were let go who are actually saying these things, and there's no information to prove it. And so things ended up where they ended up. But I think the notes that you really need to focus, or that I would like to explain, is when there were secret meetings with political adversaries that these guys never made us aware of. They were aware of the relationship months before, obviously before the taping that Ben Graham did, and he was involved in secret meetings with leadership before that taping happened. And obviously he knows he's being taped, and so the conversation, you can determine whether or not he's leading that conversation or the way that happened. You'll have to look at the motive and whether or not that was just a poor innocent soul who was trying to protect himself when he came that night, or if there was some other ulterior motive. Now remember, the actual taping that happened is after the extortion plot has been put in motion. And nobody has connected those two links together between the staff and the extortion plot, but I'll explain at the end that there's a link there, and just hasn't been exposed at this point. So whether it's a knowing or unknowing link will yet to be determined and fleshed out, I think, from law enforcement. But what we did see is that not only were there the secret meetings, but there was really inappropriate text going to family members from Allard. Just right off the bat, really just stuff that should not be happening. The drawing of pornographic cartoons and expletive-laden tirades at myself and Representative Gamrat from his end. Just really ridiculous stuff that was going on in the office, and we had issues with work quality. And of course, they'd apologize and try and straighten it out, and we kind of deal with that. And then of course they said they were under a lot of stress from the speakers team, and maybe they were. That wasn't something that they shared with us, that hey, they were in secret meetings with these guys and these guys were pushing them or pressuring them. Of course, if that were the case, they didn't expose it, and they also didn't go to the House Business Office, to Human Resources, to say that they had issues with the representatives that they were serving. Did never do it. Wasn't made aware of it until, of course, it broke in the Human Resources wasn't aware of it until it broke in the after the fact that they'd been let go. Now the Speaker is the one that approves the hiring and firing, and so obviously the Whistleblower Act, I'm not sure exactly, or the Whistleblower Action, not sure exactly what they're thinking in that, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that that the two representatives who don't have the authority to hire or fire are the ones named in the whistleblower suit, but not the state of Michigan or the Speaker's office, with whom they were meeting with to complain about the representatives that they they were supposed to be helping serve the constituents with. So, there was also one of the things that was missed in the media, just overlooked, totally blown by, is that the men had acknowledged the fact that they were in conversations that were witnessed, that they were planning to follow and take pictures of, and then broadcast that information. That information obviously didn't make it into the media, nor the fact that they themselves attested to the fact that was the case. And so you have people who are taping in secret meetings and acknowledging that they're going to to follow in tape and broadcast. And yet, for some reason, that isn't connected to the fact that these guys weren't really focused on work. They were focused on some other agenda in regards to that. Not only in that regard, but no one can say and would say that, hey, that seems to really sort of question the motive or the stuff that's behind that. And finally, inside of that, the idea that these guys were connected to the extortion situation. So, I think that it's difficult because in this situation, and the law enforcement will kind of flesh that out. I'm hopeful that they do a good job in this the police investigation. But one thing I've tried to explain to people, and it's difficult because you have all these layers. You have this criminal thing, and you have that thing, and you have the House committee thing, and you have these words that go out: deceitful, dishonest, untrustworthy. People think that that's actually happened in a court of law, and in reality, it's based on unfounded accusations put forward by men who are working with the people who drew up the report. That's what you got, okay? And of course, the people that they were working with, who were in charge of this whole process, they were secretly meeting with before that. So you have to kind of take a look at that. And is it a political hit or a political takedown? You'll have to make that determination. But the texter, the extortionist, and the principals put the phone initially in the name of C. Livengood. That was from the private investigators. We still haven't seen that from the police report, and then ultimately with some sort of the text after text explaining that the staff had acquired, and we obviously had had acquired a bunch of information and in regards to all of that, and had knowledge and connection to the staff, and knew of the operations of surveillance that was going on by the staff. And then ultimately the staffers take the story to C. Livengood, to Chad Livengood. So you have this situation where the extortionist says the phone is in C. Livengood. I'm not sure why they put it in that name, and then of course it was changed later on after it was exposed that the phone, the extortion plot was using this phone. But at the end of the whole thing, months later, the staffer ends up taking the story and taking the tapes that he'd acquired secretly and taped secretly, and that he was leading the conversations on. He takes those tapes and he takes them to C. Livengood. So that says there's either a knowing connection or an unknowing connection between the extortionist and the staffers. And you might not see that, but there's some sort of connection and relationship there, because that doesn't just happen, and yet it did. So anyway, so those are just a few things I think were missed. I think that they should have been fleshed out. They're all documented, and I think people can listen to that. Obviously, the people who will listen to it, they can make their own determination in regards to all that. Maybe it's not useful. Maybe it doesn't really matter at this point, but I do think that those were a few things that were, I would say intentionally missed by the media and sort of the media storm, because it didn't fit their paradigm of where they were going, which was really just to say, these people were deceitful, dishonest, untrustworthy, and these poor souls that were put upon in this situation. So you can take a look at it and kind of draw your own conclusions. Okay, I don't know how many more of these I'll do. There's several other areas, and you can kind of decide. But if you don't want to see them, don't watch them. That's what I would say. Then I don't have to delete your comments about the fact that that you want me to be quiet. Just don't watch them. There's lots of other stuff on YouTube. Just watch that. So okay. Anyway, have a great day, all of you. Both my political enemies and those people that can't stand the fact that I was a conservative rep and hate everything that I stand for and want to vilify me. You guys have a good day, and also to the friends out there that I still have, you folks have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.